Hey, okay, looks like we're getting some people in. So I'm gonna wait for some more people to come in, then we'll go and get started. Now I know somebody just joined. Someone said, "Hey, crypto case. Hey, Russia. All right, represent. That's awesome. Where in Russia are you? Thank you. You too. You too. I appreciate that. Let me see. Let me pull up some questions. Hey, everybody. Hey, V1 MER. So we've got a few people going on. All right, awesome. Awesome. Oh, we got 4 now. Okay. Have I been to the AMA yet? No, I think this is the AMA. Yeah, this is where you guys get to ask me anything you have questions on. Okay, we're gonna give it a few more minutes, and I'll go and get started with you guys. Yeah, I'm actually in Boston right now, and normally it's like pretty gray. Normally it's like pretty gray, but today it's actually sunny or like kind of sunny. I'm literally right across MIT. I can actually see MIT from where I am. Okay. Yeah, we'll give a few more minutes. Hey, we got 7. Okay, all right. If we hit 10, I'll be happy. All right, restart. Likewise. Good to see you. Good to see you. And I can't see you what you're doing right now. I can see your little profile picture. So yeah, good to see you guys. I haven't been on the chat as much recently, guys. It's been crazy busy. We've been focusing on going to MIT and just getting our name out there. So you guys saw the we were at MIT about last week. It was either a week or 2 weeks ago. As you can tell from my eyes, I've been like working like crazy hard. So I actually have Scott here, who's our engineer. I think we're now like pseudo roommates. So just living the startup life. Now I'm coordinating with Goran. Goran is pretty great, by the way. He just joined us recently, like about a month ago now, or maybe 3 weeks ago, and he's just been killing it. He's been killing it. So the nice thing about startups is that pretty much anyone will help you that you reach out to. Pretty much. Sometimes you don't get a response back, but in general, people will wanna help you. You just got to make sure that it's good help, you know. So, and I'll give it one more minute, and we'll go get started. So, restart. You can go tell me where you're from. Are you from Russia as well? I'm gonna wait for restart. I'm gonna wait for restart to give an answer. And all right, so it's 10 cents. So we'll just go and get started, guys. So hi, my name is Ryan. Nice to meet you guys. I'm wearing the Conduit T-shirt right here. Give me a second. A Conduit T-shirt. I pretty much wear these every day. That's like my uniform. I have literally my whole closet is pretty much Conduit T-shirts. So this is the Conduit AMA with yours truly. So we're just gonna be answering, kind of any questions you guys have. I have some prepared questions. If you have any questions for me, just put them in the chat. I'm gonna introduce first, really, myself and obviously how Conduit got started and what we're doing, and then really transition over across from MIT. So I came to MIT probably about 5 6 years ago. So I'm still pretty young. And so I came in and I was studying something called mechatronics. It's called mechatronics, MECHATRONICS. And I call it the Tony Stark major because it's you can do anything with it. Literally, it's a combination of mechanical, electrical, systems, materials, anything. So I was like a super nerd. And so I studied that and actually finished it in about 2 years. So I was taking about 7 8 classes a semester. So by the time I was a sophomore, I'd already finished pretty much a whole undergraduate curriculum. And so I studied that actually under a man named Steve, Professor Lieb. I don't know. I think his first name Steve. And so yeah, MIT is actually really great because it has one of the only mechatronics classes in the world. So that's actually one of the reasons I went there. And so I finished that in about 2 years. And so I did it from Oh, can you guys hear me, by the way? I didn't think about that. Can someone let me know if you guys can hear me. Restart V1. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Okay. Okay. Awesome. 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 Thank you, V1. Awesome. Okay. So yeah. So I was at MIT and I was studying mechatronics. I actually took a class just to show you how crazy MIT is. I took a class called How to Make Almost Anything under a man named Neil Gershenfeld. You should look him up. He's really accomplished. And that's a class where they teach you 3D printing, soldering, wired communication, wireless communication, Bluetooth communication. Um, Cause it to blend itself. So it's like a portable blender, effectively, for your protein shakes. Because I'm super into fitness, so that's what attracted me. But so I did that, and then finished that in about 2 years. And after that, I was reading something about reading. I was reading a book called Quantum Man, and so with Quantum Man, talked about Richard Feynman and just all the work that he had done. And so it's pretty crazy. Is that actually? So he's actually an MIT alum, and he was in MIT, I think, in the late 30s, 1930s, and he actually worked at the Manhattan Project and the Challenger and everything. Was a Nobel Prize winner. And so for him, it was really interesting because he had made about 2 3 different fields. I think there was this QED, so quantum electrodynamics, and then he also worked on quantum chromodynamics. He actually had this really cool paper. I know you have some nerds here, so I'll talk about this just really briefly. He actually made a paper where you could describe all of quantum physics effectively as one electron moving back and forth in time, interacting with itself. So in other words, you could think of all the electrons, all dynamics, as if the same particle interacting with itself in different periods of space and time. So super trippy. And they didn't. It was like almost too much for people, so they didn't accept it. But I think it ended up inspiring some work later on in the quantum realm. But anyways, is that so I was reading about that, and it was really fascinating because he in 1981 he was at MIT, and he was at the conference called the First Annual Conference on the Mathematics of Physics. It was at 1981. I mean, you're just talking really about what Apple One. I think the Commodore, I think just came out. The Commodore just came out. We're talking about very, very weak computers compared to what we have now. The computers that we have now, I mean, they probably fill up like a whole university in terms of capacity and brain power. And so they asked him, how are you going to simulate all these quantum physics experiments? And so, well, why don't you make a quantum computer? And so he on the board writes out this outline of how to actually build a quantum computer, making a whole new field pretty much in a Q&A session. He ended up publishing a paper later on, I think about a year later, called Quantum Simulators. You guys should look it up. It's a really, really cool paper. It's pretty much the foundation, effectively, of the whole field. There have been a few people that had talked about it before him, but he's, I think, the biggest, the one who really got things going. And then fast forward, you got someone get to the mid 90s or early 90s. You have people like Seth Lloyd, Isaac Schwang, Peter Shor. So Seth Lloyd actually wrote the first paper of how to build a quantum computer in I want to say 1992. You guys might have to fact check me on that one. And then, but at the time though, it didn't really mean anything. Actually, I remember when I was taking classes and when I was working with Seth Lloyd, is that he was talking about how he had a really hard time getting a job because he's like an expert in this one thing that like no one understood what it was and what it was useful for. And I guess that's kind of the case now today to a degree. But then you have a guy named Peter Shor come into the situation. He's also an MIT professor, is still there, and he created something called Shor's algorithm, which has, as you guys probably know, a lot of cryptographic applications. It pretty much can keep it very simple, pretty much break codes faster than pretty much any classical algorithm, any normal algorithm we have today. And so from that, really, you started getting a lot more attention in the field where it started to grow exponentially. And then you have Isaac Schwang, who's also part of there, and you have Scott Aronson, who he wasn't one of the original fathers of the field, but he contributed a lot in terms of the actual what's called quantum complexity theory. So in other words, in computer science, you're always trying to see what can computers do, what are they capable of, and so he's done a lot of work in terms of seeing what quantum computers are capable of. So that's all the sort of the background, unnecessary background on quantum computing. But bringing it back to the Conduit is that, so I back to really my own story, is that I was studying about the quantum man, and I was really, really fascinated by this. So it was a field that I saw that I could really contribute to. Sort of, I felt like almost like a lot of the quote unquote low hanging fruit almost had been picked in terms of, I can't say really low hanging fruit. That's a little too hindsight bias, but things, gravity had already been discovered and formulated in multiple different theories. Quantum physics had already been formulated. A lot of chemical history had already been formulated. So I was like, oh man, what area can I really contribute in and make an impact on a scientific level and have an impact, have weight in the real world. And so I was studying under Seth Lloyd. I was just taking a few classes under him, and he ended up becoming my advisor around my end of my sophomore year. And with that, I really started to delve into just advanced quantum computing as well as just information theory in general. So, I was taking classes like, just like it's not information theory, complexibility, automata, some stuff about Turing machines. All this is super nerdy stuff. So I'm sorry, anyone who's not super techie, I'm sorry I'm confusing you. Just know that I'm talking about one type of computer and a different type of computer. One's more powerful. My major form that actually creates the first quantum engineering major, the first quantum engineering major at MIT. I had chosen a path at MIT where I could really do anything I wanted. So at MIT we have numbers for all of our majors. So in other words, you wouldn't say I'm mechanical engineering. You wouldn't say I'm a physicist. You'd say I'm course 2, which is mechanical engineering, and course 8. So if you guys ever go to MIT and someone asks you, what course you guys are, just say you're course 2 or you're course 8, and you'll be good. And so I did that, made my own major, and I announced this. Oh, guys, I'm so excited! I made my own major. And actually, the world's like you guys already know the world's first quantum engineer. And so people often ask, what does that mean, right? What is quantum engineering about? And that's a really great question. I mean, the field itself, actually, I've created the field. I mean, technically speaking, I want to be clear here, is there are research groups now. Like there's a research group actually at MIT called quantum engineering. So there are already people technically housed under the quantum engineering research group. And when they use quantum engineering, what they're meaning is they're still doing quantum computing, but they're just bringing together different disciplines. So mechanical engineers, computer scientists, anything really, material scientists. I guess I had a similar approach, in the sense that for me, quantum engineering is it's actually one of my for me it's a field where I want to look at all engineering through a quantum lens, right? So think about something like materials. All your materials, every property of your materials, whether it's like a straw to a computer to everything, is actually based off of quantum physics, right? It's based off how things are operating on a very subatomic, atomic level, and all that's quantum physics. So understanding quantum physics has a huge ramifications in terms of the materials you're using, how you're using them, why you're using them. Look at, for example, something called graphene, which is a nanomaterial, and that applies to quantum computing in the sense that quantum computing is all based around materials. So there's something called a quantum dot. I'm about to teach you guys something here. Get ready. Normally I charge for this. It's called the quantum dot. And what it is, it's sort of the most common structure of a quantum computer as it's taught today. There's different ways to do it, but this is sort of pretty much the fundamentals. And so what you do is you get a cage of atoms, and you remove one of the atoms. You remove one of the atoms, so you get rid of that guy, and then you put an electron in there. And so now this electron is sort of surrounded by all these atoms that are a lot bigger, more powerful, and have bigger forces affecting them than the electron does. The electron's very small and very weak compared to those two, compared to all the atoms. And so what happens with these quantum dots is that actually the electron is so easily influenced by things even like van der Waals forces that you end up getting something called a superposition, a quantum superposition. In other words, effectually what I'm saying is that you're actually able to do quantum computing by trapping an electron around a bunch of atoms. In a more detailed sense, is because you're talking about such a small level, right? Such a small atomic level, the perturbations due to the vibrations of these atoms is actually what causes this electron to pretty much go up and down effectively. And this up and down ends up being computation. Now that brings me to, okay, well, how is that computation, right? It doesn't make any sense. Well, you got to remember, what is computation really? Computation is pretty much a model of actions that we pose upon the world. I know it's going a totally different direction than when we started, but that's totally okay. Hopefully you guys are still interested and then not having dozed off. And so computation, remember, is just a model that we impose upon the world. All right, it's saying, okay, here is, in short, we're saying with any computation, you're saying here's data, and here's how we change that data. We change it from one data set to the other. So in other words, if I said I have the set 0, 1, 2, and 3, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, that's why there's 4. 0, 1, 2, 3. Then if I change that data set to now say 1, 2, 3, 4, I've now done a computation. I've changed the data set. And now in real life, of course, now this is going to be a little trippy, is you've got to remember is that there is no number one out there. You're not going to go out into the wild and find a number one. You're not going to pluck a number one, And so one is a construct we've created in our brain and then imposed on the world and said, okay, that's a number one. There's one of those guys, there's two of those guys, there's three of those guys. But there's not actually a physical one you can come and pick up. It's a number, it's a model that we assign on the universe to understand what's going on. And so computation is that same way. It's saying, okay, here's what's going on. Here's this data set changing. And we can describe that through something called computation. All that means is it's a delta. It's a changing in the data set. And so there's actually a book. I don't know how techy you guys are, but there's a book that's really, really interesting. And it's not too techy, don't worry. It's like a popular science book called Programming the Universe by Seth Lloyd. That's really, really interesting because it talks about the universe. Instead of looking at through a physics lens, right? Okay, we have a ball and you drop it and this gravity pulls it down. Instead, you're talking about how, say you have this ball here. I'm holding this ball in my hand and then it has a certain weight, certain height, certain mass, a certain volume. That's a data set, right? You drop it. Now the gravity is changing its position, changing its energy, technically changing its mass on a very, very small level. That's general relativity. And so you're talking about a change in a data set, right? And so what did we just talk about? So computation is just a change in a data set. So the universe can actually be seen not just as as physics, not just as these laws and theorems, but actually they're causing things to come together, pull apart, reactions, what have you. But actually, the world can be seen as a computer that is computing, changing the data set of its own self. So you can see the universe itself is actually a computer computing itself. In fact, because thereby you have something called quantum physics in the universe, you can actually see the world as a quantum computer computing itself. Computing itself. In fact, that's what leads to more complexity, is that it's this data set pretty much interacting with itself. So it goes exactly, actually, what we were talking about in the beginning with Richard Feynman, right? Where he says, okay, you can look at the universe as an electron going through space and time, interacting with itself. So it's not the exact same thing, but it's similar. And so that same methodology can actually be applied to the whole universe, that the whole universe is just a computer talking to itself, making things more and more complex. And that has analogies to something called thermodynamics, where there's a law that you guys are probably already familiar with called the second law of thermodynamics. Second law of thermodynamics states that entropy in a system tends to increase. It tends to increase. Now, keep in mind, that's usually what people get wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will increase. It means it tends to increase. And that you're going to see a lot of that have ramifications from chemistry, material science, but also just think about it in your daily life, right? So in other words, if you have a clean room, what they're saying with thermodynamics says, okay, if you have a clean room, then over time, it's probably going to get messy, especially if you're doing interactions in the system. And so what I'm saying here is that complexity, that chaos, that entropy that we call it in information theory, is actually can be seen as a result of the universe computing upon itself. So it's really interesting stuff. It's really interesting stuff. And I'd recommend that book, Programming the Universe. I'm not getting paid to say that. It's actually a really good book. I actually have it myself. I have not got it signed yet. I should do that. But now I guess I'll end my Vsauce like talk here. Vsauce guy, by the way, guys, is a YouTuber who makes really interesting videos about science and everything. So I'll end the quantum talk there. If you guys have any questions, you can just ping me online or anything like that. But bringing it back to what I was talking about in terms of Conduit, is that so it's 2014. I was at MIT, and there was two things going on. So one is I was in bio class. Right, there's a class. So we have numbers for everything. We're super techie. So I was in a class called 7013, which is a bio class. This is genetics-based bio class. And we were talking about how the Human Genome Project took about 10 years to make. Right. In other words, it took 10 years of finding the data, understanding what the genes are. Where do they come from? So I think of all the science behind Ancestry.com, 23andMe, this understanding, okay, well, I'm actually 23%, Ukrainian or 50% Kenyan, all that stuff, figuring out what the genes are and the markers and how they've changed over time. It took 10 years. And now, keep in mind, we can do that in about a few months, which is extraordinarily impressive. I mean, you're talking about in 15 years, you've been able to do something that took us 10 years in a few months. And keep in mind, at least not that I know, there's no other species out there that understands its own self, its own genetic code to the level that we do. So, I mean, the fact that we understand ourselves to such a genetic level is amazing. And even if it took us 100 years, that would still be an amazing process and invention. So it took 10 years, right? And it took a lot of data crunching, a lot of data analysis. But now you answer the question, okay, what the genes are. Okay, well, in chromosome here, you have this gene, that gene, the other gene, right? It's got, this chemical, that chemical, that chemical, all these nucleic acids. But what happens, what you realize in that situation is that now you've got a lot more questions to ask, right? So, okay, now you know what the genes are, in other words, but you don't know what they do. So think about something like intelligence, right? Your brain. So your brain it's an expression of your genes. Your genes are an expression of your DNA. But how those things work together is extraordinarily complex. It's extraordinarily complex. I think especially because you're a macroscopic being. We have, I want to say billions. It might be trillions. We have billions of cells inside of us, and they're all using that same DNA to make this computational process. Even something simple as picking up a ball, answering a message, that requires an extraordinary amount of neural complexity that we don't even realize goes on. All coming from our genes. And so you think about things like intelligence. Think about things about like height, eye color. Where are those genes and how are they affecting us? And those are questions that we wanted answers for as scientists, as researchers, as academics. And with that, we realized, and in this class, the reason I mentioned this class is that's where that problem came to my attention, is that there's a need for computing power to answer these bigger questions. these bigger questions in the world. And more specifically, it goes into a field called computational biology. Now, I know this sounds very, very academic, and that makes complete sense. But it's not just scientists, it's not just researchers who are doing this. If you've ever taken an Advil, a Tylenol, any headache medication, or if you're even involved in some recreational activities, then all that has to do with chemistry, right? It all has to do with biology. If I eat this thing, how does this affect me? And all those questions goes into data analysis. You do that experiment, you analyze the data, and you see how something that's this small with maybe 10 different chemicals affects something this big with millions of chemicals going on, millions of processes going on at the same time. And so it's huge applications. And in fact, I think I talked about one of the applications in a video you guys saw. So for instance, again, for drugs, pharmaceutical companies, currently a company would need $2.9 billion to actually make a drug. And it would take years and years of research just to make the drug, not even talking about the approval from the government, or particularly the United States, the FDA. And so, but again, all that is experimenting. So by creating this powerful cloud computing platform, you're able to cut those costs. You're able to cut that time by factors of 1,000, even potentially 1,000,000. Potentially. Don't quote me on that. I know you guys will, but don't quote me on that. In fact, and it's not just computational biology, right? So one of our pilot customers is Fresh Epidemic, led by a guy named Rob Thompson, that I know personally, great guy, and he's a graphic design company, and so for him it'll take him say 8 hours, right, to design to make a design. So he says, all right, computer, make this design. I'll get back to you at the end of today after I get lunch and dinner and do everything else, do laundry. But now with something like the Conduit, which is again this decentralized cloud computing platform, is that you're cutting that time by a factor of like 1,000. So I let him know. I said, okay, well, and I'll quote the law. It's called Amdahl's law for the super techie guys here. And so you can because of graphic design, you're able to split up the job across computers. So in other words, instead of this one computer, say making this design by itself, you can say, well, Scott's computer, do a part of it, Brian's computer do a part of it, and then Rob's computer do a part of it. And so we're all working at the same time. And so for him, it takes him about 8 hours. I told him, well, with us, you could easily cut that down to about 5 minutes. About 5 minutes. And so now you're talking about a huge difference. So instead of the time it would take for you to pretty much work a whole day, right, or just sleep and wake up the next day, talking about the time it might take you to brush your teeth, right, or go to the bathroom. And that same time, he's now made his work from 8 hours to about 5 minutes, and that's just depending on how many computers he wants to use. And it would cost him a nickel, a dime pretty much. And so he's saving hours of his time while able to do more and more work faster and easier. And so that's just some of the applications what we're doing. And it really, the way I explain it to people is that if there's a computer being used, so Alex, how's it going, Alex? I do not speak, I want to say it's Russian. I don't speak Russian, but if anyone here can translate, that would be awesome. And so Crypto Case, if you can translate, that would be much appreciated. I'm gonna make sure all your questions are answered. And so what I explain to people is this way, is that it is Russian. Okay, great. Gord, if you could translate that would be awesome, because unfortunately, I can do a lot of things, but I cannot speak Russian yet. Not yet. The way I do explain to people is this way, is that if anywhere there's a computer being used, Conduit can do it more powerfully and in a shorter time. And in a way, think about Conduit, and I explained it through different ways to different audiences. So I said the decentralized cloud computing platform. But one thing I like to say is actually I like to call it an ultra computer, right? So now a supercomputer is really just a computer with a bunch of other smaller computers within it, right? And it says, okay, well, if you look at a supercomputer, it's just even like Titan, right? It's just a bunch of smaller microprocessors or processors, and just I want to be accurate here, processors in general that are just put together. There's actually one that Richard Feynman worked on called Thinking Machines in the 80s. And what we're doing is we're making an ultra computer in the sense that it's all these computers working together on a higher scale than exists today. It's similar to I don't know if you guys have ever seen an article or articles growing up where they'd say, well, if everyone turned off their lights before they left the room, we'd save millions of watts of energy and we'd save the environment and what have you. It's that same thinking. Right? If we all work together, this would happen. If we all work together, that would happen. If we all work together, honestly, most of our lives would be a lot easier if we all work together, to be honest with you. But I really saw an opportunity here for everyone to work together in a system that makes sense, right? In a system that is incentivized for people to work together. People have tried previous attempts at a system like this. So there's something called SETI at Home that you guys might be familiar with. SETI at Home is it's just like it sounds. It's a search for extraterrestrial life. And what it is you would be able to rent out your computing power through the internet to help researchers search for extraterrestrial life. There's actually a movie, I don't know if you've heard it, called Contact with, I don't remember her name, but this famous female actress. And I think she references SETI at Home in the movie. And it was a project from the 70s and 80s, if I remember correctly. And again, it's this principle of renting out your computer. That's the first major one like that really existed. But really, you can, if you want to be historical about it, you can really trace this back to any time that humans have worked together and shared resources for a common goal. And more recently, I think the one that always stands out for me is called BOINC, BOINC. This is at UC Berkeley. We actually had actually consulted with an engineer at UC Berkeley a little while ago. And they're actually the biggest volunteer computing network that exists today. And so they have about 250,000 computers. For them, I think that's amazing. That's awesome. I think in terms of where Conduit stands in terms of that is that, I'm looking at this number, 250,000 computers, and I think, wow, that's really awesome. But I think, okay, well, but there's 7 billion people in the world. And there's actually 4 billion people on the internet today. There's 4 billion people on the internet today. So for me, 250,000 is almost margin of error levels of computing power, right? Because is that even 1%, guys? Let's see. So it's 4 billion. So that's not even 1 million. So it's less than 1%. Less than 0.1%. I think that's what, 0.025% approximately? Something like that. I think it should be 0.0, what is that? 25 divided by 4. But like 0.007%, I want to say, something along those lines. So very, very, very small. And so, I said, okay, why is that, right? Why is this network small? And part of it is, it's an incentive system, number one. And two is that it's not just about making the network, right, guys? It's not just about making technology. You have to make it usable for people, relevant for people, and show the value, make the value easy to acquire from the system. So with BOINC, what I saw the areas can improve is that when you make a project on BOINC, you say, I want to use this volunteer computer. I want to use all these 250,000 computers. You're not able to do that because you have to submit your project. You have to advertise your project. And you have to really get the computers for yourself. You really have to market for yourself, which is maybe a skill set that researchers and scientists either don't have the time for, or don't have the resources for. And if you do, then it's almost like, why would you use volunteer computing if you can use maybe something else, something that's easier to use? If you have the time and money to market what you're doing, why not just do what you're doing in the first place? And so what Conduit is, what it improves upon is it's incentivizing people. It says, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay you for your computing power, and you're gonna be a part of this process. It's gonna be an economy, right? It says, instead of it being like a thank you, thank you so much, I really appreciate your contribution. It's now saying, I'm going to pay you for what you're doing. And so I think it's a huge difference from where technology stands today. I was actually doing an interview with Kifla Waldo from MIT. So shout out to Kifla. And I was doing an interview with Kifla about this, pretty much the state of the internet in terms of data sharing and what have you, and privacy and everything. And I don't know how much of a big deal it is internationally, but I know in the United States, we actually had most recently the Facebook hearing, the Facebook testimony. That was a pretty big deal. And regardless of kind of what your opinions are on that, is that overall, I think right now we're in a time of the internet where we're giving things away to big companies, but we're not getting paid for it, right? So anytime you're on these oh, I'm sorry. It's okay, V1. Goran, maybe you can translate. I'm sorry, V1. Let's see. V1, would it help if I talk slower? It's free, right? It's like, oh, here are all these services for free. But of course, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? There's no such thing as a free lunch, meaning that you yourself, your data, your life really is being mined out and sold. But whether you agree with it or not, I think one thing that I see as a problem is, okay, we're not even really getting compensated for it. I think some people could argue that getting the service for free, and that's the payment. But one thing I really like about Conduit is it changes that model, it changes that mindset, where it's saying, okay, well, you do have resources, you do have something that's valuable, and you should be compensated for that. And that only makes sense. And so that I think that's what's really unique about Conduit in terms of the internet. Number one, and number two is that in terms of community of the internet, right? So right now, I mean, the internet's notorious for hacks, scams. I mean, guys, we're in the ICO space, and you guys already know there's a lot of scams, um, and just pretty much making a bad name for people. Even on the internet, people, have fake names. They make, they leave harsh comments. There's huge cases of cyberbullying because people feel like they can say anything, and so there's a certain lack of camaraderie, I feel like, right now in terms of the internet. I mean, you can find it in certain spaces. I mean, and I think Reddit is really a testament to how amazing communities can be. I'm actually a huge fan of something called Lose It, Reddit Lose It, the subreddit Lose It. It's where all the people trying to lose weight, we're all in there together talking about how much weight we've lost and everything. And you look at it and you'll see, okay, wow, everyone on this chat, they have a statistic. Everyone on this chat has lost, like, I think it was like 10 million pounds or something like that. And so, and you see when people post pictures and they say, good job, you're looking great. I'm so proud of you for losing, 30, 40, 50, 200 pounds. And so we really have got to if we want the internet to survive and survive to an extent that makes sense, right? That is beneficial to our human experience, is that we got to make sure the internet is always something that's useful, that it's a tool for us as opposed to a hindrance to our lives. And so what Conduit, I think, really adds to that conversation is that it's a community of people across the world working together. No one on Conduit, no one's on Conduit trying to hurt you. No one's trying to steal your data. No one's trying to bully you. No one's trying to scam you. It's genuinely people saying, hey, guys, let's work together to do something, right? So whether that be to help a researcher find out how to make a better cancer treatment, understand the genome better, or to a developer creating an application, right? Something that we call now DApps, right? Decentralized apps. And so it's really just about helping people. I mean, that's really what drives Conduit at the end of the day is it's, hey, let's all work together and let's help people, just like the articles that I was mentioning before. But instead of just sort of depending on people's, or I don't say depending on people's goodwill, but rather thinking that that's enough. I mean, I think it's goodwill is great, and it can go very, very, very far. But I think that it's crucial that we all work together. I have crypto case. So we're actually working on our MVP right now. So we're gonna have that released probably later this year in MVP. So we'll be able to show that to you guys. So that's gonna be pretty awesome. We're actually that's why you see all these bags under my eyes, because we've been working super hard. But yeah, and so that's really what I think Conduit offers to the actual Conduit, the internet conversation, the use of resources conversation, and I think maybe talking about more specifics is that for us, maybe I'll go back maybe to some Conduit specific Conduit questions now. Is that so? As you guys already know, that we use something called a DPoS blockchain. It's called a delegated proof of stake. Now, it's different from blockchain as articulated in Bitcoin. It's a different type of blockchain. And what it means is blockchain for Bitcoin is a proof of work. And in what effect that means is that everyone on the network effectively has some relationship to the actual computation being done in the network, right? I mean, literally the ledger itself is a list of transactions that have naturally cryptographic properties to each transaction. So what's different about what we're doing is, again, it's a delegated proof of stake system that, in short, selects master nodes, or selects pretty much what we call panel witnesses, in order to determine how a job is conducted and verifying that job as well. And so, in other words, it's a decentralized system, it's a distributed system. But the reason we've done it that way, delegated proof of stake, is that with proof of work, the problem we're going to have is that there's going to have a lot of wasted computation. And so we actually leaned away from blockchain initially. So I want to make that clear, is that we leaned away from blockchain initially. I was never someone who's like, okay, well, let's use blockchain. Let's just find some way to use it. Instead, I was actually more interested in, again, the idea of Conduit, is providing that computing power. And it was mid last year where I said, okay, well, blockchain would actually be really, really useful for some of the technical things that we're working with. So we decided, obviously, not to go with proof of work, like I was just saying. We decided to go with what's called a delegated proof of stake system. And with the relevancy of that means that there's not wasted computation that you might have in other situations. I've seen other competitors. I know people have mentioned a few. I won't name call unless you guys specifically ask for one in particular. But a lot of other systems or crypto companies are trying to do something similar, and some of that rents your computer idea, that pay for your computer idea. I'm actually upset, though. Actually, guys, I'm actually upset because the Airbnb motto, be the Airbnb of your computer, Airbnb of cloud computing. I saw another company. I'm not going to mention their name. I didn't mention their name. I was really close to that. I was really close. And they stole our phrase. And you guys already know who they are. But I'm not going to say their name. But you guys know who they are. So I was really frustrated at that. But that's okay. Because we can do better phrases anyways. And so, good question, good question. So we are. So actually, okay, that goes back to a little bit what I was talking about just now. And so those are the difference between us and those systems is that they're particularly with Golem is that Golem is actually based off of Ethereum's blockchain. So they're pretty much a skin off of Ethereum's blockchain. Now the problem there, you have a few problems there, but one is that it's actually in a different sector of the cloud than we are. So in other words, Golem and I are not Golem and Conduit are not actually in the same sectors of the cloud industry. So in the cloud industry, you have three major sectors. You have software as a service, platform as a service, and then you have infrastructure as a service. So you have three major categories, all in really different needs, different customers, different demographics. So Golem is actually a platform as a service. In addition to that, is that they're also a research project. And they say that in their white paper, they make it very clear that they're a research project. So in other words, for them, they're not interested in actually, this is going to be very businessy, but they're not interested in creating value and acquiring value. In other words, you're not going to see a lot of from their side in terms of getting customers, expanding customers, creating partnerships, what have you. I mean, you're going to see maybe to a small degree of that, but I think they make it clear that this is something that they want to make for the sake of making it. I think especially in terms of release, I've actually known about Golem for the past 4 or 5 years, and so I haven't really, and to be honest with you guys, I haven't seen a lot of progress on their front, and just really till recently. But also in terms of we looked at blockchain before we actually decided to do what we're doing in terms of the delegated proof of stake, and we realized is that Ethereum's blockchain just wouldn't work for a decentralized cloud computing platform. At least in terms of our estimations, to be fair, I want to be fair to them, is that because in part of it is due to the transactions per second wouldn't allow for you the microtransactions to occur across the system at the speed that you need them to. So in other words, when you're talking to pilot customers, I mean, you're talking about something that easily goes from 1,000 computers to 100 computers in seconds. And so you're talking about a lot of transactions going on at one time. So if your system can't handle a lot of transactions, I mean, you're dealing with a problem there. And then two, just the way the Ethereum's blockchain works is that you're going to have problems in terms of the Golem network connecting and working with the underlying blockchain of Ethereum. This is sort of the latency and bandwidth issues you're going to have there from the communication of your skin to the other skin is going to be problematic. Some as well, actually, I mean, I think they're a little bit more robust. I definitely give them credit. I think they're making their own blockchain. I want to say they for sure. I'm pretty sure they are, but I'm it pretty much works like this. Like imagine if you had a computer, you had 3 computers, right? So you had one where it could only do Microsoft Word. It could only type things up, word processing. You have another one, right? You have another one where it's called Platform as a Service. Well, that's Microsoft Office Word. That's Microsoft Office Suite. That's Word, presentation, Excel, all into one. But that's the only thing you can do on these computers. You can either do Word on that computer, Office Suite on this computer, and then you have Infrastructure as a Service, which is actually just the whole computer. I mean, you can have Microsoft Office Suite, but really it's saying, what do you want to do with it? And so that's, I think, which is a lot more robustness. So that's why some of our pilot customers, like there's one called Keaton Consulting, they're a performance engineering company, right? So it's led by a woman named Laura Keaton, who's awesome and amazing. And so with that is that her job, her company's mission is that they'll go to your company and say, okay, here's what your technology is doing. How can we automate that? Especially in terms of the internal logistics, whether that be project management or word processing, what have you. And she'll just run through your system millions of times until she gets to a more optimized solution, right? So I don't know if anyone's familiar here with, you could say almost like the least squares approximation type methodology. It's kind of just trying something different, seeing how it works, trying something different, so you get to the most optimized solution. And so with that, it's a lot of computing power, but you're talking about also a lot of different architectures that you have to test out at the same time. And so due to that, I mean, you need a lot of flexibility for what you're doing. You also need, again, a lot of computing power. So that's why for us, that's sort of a particular customer that we're working with. as a general strategy, what we've been focusing on is the strategic partnerships, right? So we've been focusing on like WorkBar, like you guys already know. So they're a shared office space. Actually, they're based out here in Boston. I was actually at an event for them last week, and with that is that they have about 7 different locations across the United States and over about 1,000 startups. And so we partnered with them to give them a free tier of cloud computing. And we're also looking to do the same thing with potentially some other companies. I don't want to name drop, in case it doesn't work out. But and so we're doing that, and then we're also looking at, pretty much in the interim period of the MVP to full-fledged release, I'm going to be focusing a lot on getting the strategic partnerships that we need, such that the computers are available for when we release the product, right? So in other words, when Conduit comes out, is that Crypto Case, what do you mean by recipe? Has a recipe for the recipe. The recipe. But yeah, while you're typing that, I'll go on with this. Is that overall, I think we're looking to partner with companies that have a lot of computers. I think someone was asking us, it's a good question too, is that how many computers do you really need to get started? And really for us, you need to really, I would say about 1,000 computers based off the current demand that I've seen in terms of the pilot customers and what have you. If you have 1,000 computers that that are reliable and can be counted on at pretty much any given hour. I see. Okay. So maybe let me clarify. So for that video, for the promo clip, is that for that with the girl and the boy, I actually forgot if it was the girl donating to the boy or the boy donating to the girl, but I think it was the boy. So with that, so the way Conduit does that is that in short is that the girl is providing computing power to the network. It's strictly a crypto organization, strictly a blockchain organization. Because I mean, as you guys are seeing now in the ICO space and the crypto space, you have a lot of organizations that are just making blockchain to make blockchain. You're saying, hey, let's make AI. AI is a big one. Let's make an AI. Let's make a neural network blockchain, which is great. That's awesome. But they're not really focused on customers and really creating value. And that's pretty relevant, guys. And the reason I say it's relevant, of course, is because if you're not truly creating value, if you're not focusing on how to acquire value for your organization, then that means that you're not really going to be able to survive long term, right? So, for instance, actually, I was talking to one of the professors at MIT, Christian Catalini, and he actually gave me that great advice himself. Is that you see these cryptocurrencies and what have you, but they're not focused on really these business fundamentals. And so that's why I'm always proud to say that we started out, we're a business first and foremost. We started off as a business. I actually, again, leaned away from blockchain and just decided to introduce it most recently to add robustness, add more power and scalability to the system we're creating now. And so I think that's really important to note. And so overall, even for us, actually it's pretty exciting. We're going to be focusing on presentations and what have you, to really get our name out there in a different way than say like a research project or just a general crypto organization would. And I think that's one of the huge differences. Overall, I think I want to go back to the delegated proof of stake system really quick. Is that for us? I know people were asking. I think Gordon was asking me a great question last night. Is it a coin or is it a token? And so the Conduit coin is the Conduit. I think I already said the answer to that, but the Conduit coin is a coin, in the sense that it's able to be created off of mining the Conduit coin. So for instance, in a job, and someone submits in a job, some work to be done on the system, is that you have two different things going on. So you have people who are getting paid from the transaction, right? So okay, well, say this job costs 100 coins, where this person contributed 1/10, so they get 10 coins. But then in the process of that, another entity verifying the transaction, right, making sure that when that customer gets back his result that it's good, then you've now created coins. So again, for those of you who don't know, so our max supply is 825 million coins, called COND. So these are coins, and we're going to be actually focusing on getting them released actually through an ICO, through airdrops and what have you in the future. I think right now what we've been focusing on, I know, like I told you guys before, I haven't been on the chat as much, is that we're focusing really on just product development, getting partnerships up and going, and everything. And actually, I think it's a good time to mention. I'm going to make an announcement about it next week. But we actually just recently we had some we actually recently just decided to move forward without some of our investors, called token advisors, due to just conflict in terms of working together. I think it just wasn't a successful partnership overall, and that's what I'll, I think it's end off. I know it's coming to a little bit close here. I got some other calls I got to go to. Even though I love you guys a lot. So for the next week, yeah, I know, yeah, I know, Goran, and so I think moving forward for the next week, I'm really excited because we partnered with a company called Innovators for Purpose. Um, Also, crypto craze. We do use our own blockchain, and so the Ether term is really mainly for the ICO itself, and then so in the white paper we talk about how we're gonna be transferring over 1 to 1 once the full fledged platform is released. So in other words, because the ICO itself is for the product development itself, is that the coins aren't available on the platform because the platform doesn't fully exist yet, because it's a work in progress. So because of that, is that we're starting off with Ethereum. We're actually looking into some potential cases right now if we can actually see if we can maybe accept Ethereum as payment on the platform later on. So we'll see. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. But going back to what I was saying before with Innovators for Purpose, is that we actually have a new partnership with a Boston tech company called Innovators for Purpose, and they teach kids STEM skills. They teach kids how to code, how to make robots. And I actually worked with them a few years ago. The CEO's name is Michael Dawson, really great guy, and he's just focused on giving back and just really improving the Cambridge community, and absolutely crypto case, and really improving the community around here. And that's something that I personally, as you guys can tell, I really believe in very strongly. I just believe in doing it in a smart way and in a way that makes sense for people. And so we're going to partner with them, doing workshops with them, and really building our relationships up in the Cambridge Boston community. In addition to, and we're also going to be starting off, there we go, thanks Goran. We're actually going to be starting off our Rush community today, pretty much led by Goran, our main man. So that's going to be pretty great. I unfortunately do not speak Russian, but Goran can be our translator. So much love to Russia. And yeah, I think so. I think that's the major thing. We're also going to be speaking at the Battle of the Quants in June 20th. June 20th. So we're going to be speaking at Carnegie Hall, which is going to be really exciting. We're going to be talking about quantum computing and how it affects cybersecurity. So similar to actually the similar topic to what I did at the MIT Bitcoin Club about a few months ago, for those of you guys who are early adopters, early writers. So we'll be doing that. So stay tuned. I'm going to see if I can live stream. I'm going to try and get live stream for you guys, because I know I wasn't able to live stream the last one. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I'm going to get back to work. And yeah, get back to work and get things going. So long live the Conduit. I'm going to give you guys maybe like 20 seconds to ask any more questions if you have any, and then I'm going to get back to work. So let me know what your guys' thoughts were. If it was awful too, you can tell me it was awful. I don't mind. That means I can do better next time. So, and then I know there's a bunch of stuff we still talk about, and I'll save that for next time. So I'll give you guys like 20 seconds. Okay, Goran's gonna translate. Awesome. Yeah, because I know we have a lot of Russian fans in this chat today. So, and thank you, Crypto Case. I really appreciate it, and you too. I wish you the best as well. And so with that, guys, I'm gonna end off. Go back to work. Feel free to message me anytime. I'm not up all the time, but I try to be up all the time. So just message me. Feel free to PM me, and I'll see you guys later.